Hello, BookTube. So I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I have a creative conundrum that I want to talk my way through. And I thought, what better way to do that talking through than filming it and putting it up as a discussion video. I have often wanted to do discussion videos and I've never had much success. So hopefully this will be that breakthrough. So let's get going. So I have imaginings that I have often wanted to transform into a written creative work. Um, but I've also thought about breaking up some of the more narratively coherent imaginings into separate projects. And one of these more coherent imaginings um, has sort of been melded into or has become the the writing project I have that I've described on BookTube or called on BookTube, or has in its title Bluebonnet. Um, and I've been working on that project recently. I took a break from my superhero story to work on this, and I'm not happy with what I've got, and I'm a bit frustrated, and I kind of want to talk my way through and try to find an avenue where I can go and a version of this project that I can do because I have three versions. So I'm going to start with the most realistic version, even though this isn't the original version of the project. It's uh, on my mind though, for a number of reasons, both creative and also collecting. Um, so, at its core, this story is about a high school senior about to go off to college who is trying to come to terms with, to understand his conflicting love hate relationship with his hometown, which is uh, decaying, it's declining. And this story is inspired in part by my own feelings towards my hometown, although it is most certainly not autofiction. Um, so I have a foundation for the story, but the more I think about it, the more I engage with it, the less I'm exactly passionate about it. I just, I mean, intellectually it's interesting, but that's not really enough to sustain a long-term creative commitment. You have to actually enjoy the writing. Otherwise, it's not really worth your time unless you're going to get paid for it and get paid quite well for it, which it's likely not going to happen. So then I've been thinking, okay, maybe the issue is I'm just not naturally inspired by more realistic stories, which is true. I am uh, fairly, it's like science fiction and fantasy is what inspires me creatively, even as I'm not having all that much success as a science fiction and fantasy reader or in general fiction in general. But anyway, but then that raises the question of why do I keep coming back to more realistic projects or wanting to read more realistic literary fiction? And I guess it's probably some kind of thing where nostalgia for being an English lit major and that whole sort of, even as I resist it and I know it is complete bunk, there is still that sense of literary fiction being the best kind of fiction, even if it is boring as all get out. But moving on to the more realistic, not the more realistic, the fantasy. So one of my ideas is for contemporary fantasy, which is a fantasy story set on Earth, although there really needs to be like a better genre term for a fantasy set on Earth. But there really isn't. I mean, contemporary kind of works, but I mean, urban fantasy doesn't because it's its own genre and it can also take place in a made-up world. So I've been thinking about that and thinking, okay, well, I could focus quite heavily on local folklore and urban legends, include a witch, which actually has a really good storyline. I quite like what I'm imagining for the witch. I'm quite happy with and fairly excited for, although how I would make it work I still don't know. But I'm also, I mean, the story looks like it's going to be a downer, that it's going to end with the main character not coming out of it alive. And I don't really want that. I really don't want that really depressing end. So I'm not entirely sure what to do with that. But I am fairly excited for it. I just need to figure out how to work the ghost character into it, because there would also be a ghost, or some other kind of being like that. And then I have a more not quite traditional fantasy. I mean, it's a fantasy set in a different world, but it would be more diesel punk, which is a type of, well, it's inspired by the early mid 20th century, with maybe some elements drawn from other time periods and other influences. And I'm kind of excited for this one too. I mean, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with this one. But I finally figured it out, and I'm kind of interested in seeing where it goes, but I don't quite know what the plot would be. Because that's certainly the problem with like the more realistic one is, I mean, also a lack of passion for it, but is I don't really know where I want to go with it. So that's something I need to work on. So yeah. So I guess unless it's like the more contemporary fantasies, maybe the way to go. And to be honest, I actually think I could probably do both the contemporary fantasy and the diesel punk because, I mean, because the idea I had, like the original imagining, kind of has this thing that's like a number of relationships, which I could just spin off and like one part of it goes to one and the other goes to another. So yeah, I think that's what I'll do. Although whether or not I can maintain the momentum and the passion for it, because I mean, it's still, I don't know necessarily if like I have the passion for a long running project. Although, does it necessarily have to be a novel? I mean, that is one thing, is determining if a project really should be a novel or a shorter work or what. But I guess my reluctance also when it comes to science fiction and fantasy is that while I am still inspired by science fiction and fantasy, even reading, reading history, I'm always constantly thinking about and being inspired to create fantasies from my history reading. But at the same time, I'm not really all that interested in reading science fiction and fantasy as a genre. It's just I don't get it. It's that like I don't really know what's going on and how to approach that at all. Um, so yeah. Uh, so what else? So I guess that is the big thing is that trying to kind of get that passion for a project, and finding the right way of telling it is maybe something I need to work on. But in a booktube, let me know how if this made any sense, um, or not, or if like you have anything to contribute. Um, yeah. So I'll see you tomorrow, obviously, with part 15 of my 2023 library tour. I'm continuing with the science fiction and fantasy, and of course, there will also be weekly reads, which will be a little bit busier than I anticipated. So yeah. So anyway, BookTube, that's all I got for this evening. So thank you. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you tomorrow. So until then, thank you and stay safe.